Hola, welcome back to my channel. My name is Yaneli, and today I'm going to be talking about Mooncat's Avatar: The Last Airbender collection. So right off the bat, I do want to give a disclosure that I did not purchase this collection myself. Mooncat was nice enough to send it to me as gifted PR. I'm not obligated to talk about it, post about it, create content, or do anything with it, but I do want to showcase these polishes off to you all. And of course, I'll showcase how they look in different lighting and how they compared with other polishes in my collection near the end. So stick around for that. Now, this collection is limited edition, meaning that these polishes are only here for a limited time. However, Mooncat does a really good job at keeping these polishes in stock. It's pretty evident with the Star Wars collection because you can still purchase the polishes from the Star Wars collection, and it's been quite a while. So Mooncat has noted that they will restock any polishes that sell out. Do not fear that they are temporarily gone right now. Do not purchase from scalpers who are way overpricing the polish or whatever. Stay calm, be patient, hit notify me if Mooncat has that option on the polish you're interested in. A thing you may have noticed with this collection is that there's no collector's box. I thought it would be cool if we had a collector's box because it could have been Appa, because Appa literally carries everyone in the show, and it would be pretty symbolic if the Appa collector's box carried the polishes, but we're not getting a collector's box. We are only getting the specialty individual cartons that the polishes come in, and they are the 4 nations with the main cast being in the forefront, except for Sokka, which is on the side panel of the water one. And it makes so much sense if you think about the show because it's always the 4 benders plus Sokka. Lastly, there is a regional restriction on this collection. You can only get this collection if you are in the US or Canada region. The one thing I do wish that Mooncat did with the news of it only being available for US or Canada was started off the teasing with that knowledge that it's only available for US and Canada regions. Like, it felt pretty weird that they waited until the end. I think a day or two before the collection actually released, and you're just like, whoa, I'm all hyped up and now you're telling me I can't get it? This type of information should definitely be put out first, and then, let us enjoy the teasers. Anyways, without further ado, let's take a deeper look at the cartons that the polishes come into and the specialty colored caps that these polishes have. Appa, yip. Alright, so looking at the boxes that the polishes come in, we have the 4 nations. Starting off with the water nation, we have the southern water tribe, and in the forefront is Katara, on the side is Sokka, and it has the water elemental symbol, and on the inside it has a nice water and moon elemental symbol as well. And then the next one is the Earth Nation, and we have Toph and the Cabbage Man as the characters, and of course the Earth elemental symbols. And then inside is a couple unique Aztecian looking patterns as well. And for the Fire Nation, we have Zuko in the forefront with Uncle Iroh and Azula on the side panels. And in the inside, there's another intricate design with some flames and a couple of suns that kind of look like eyes low-key, but they're suns because they get the power from the sun. And then lastly, we have the Air Nation, and in the forefront we have Aang, and on the side panels we have Momo and Appa. And then of course on the inside we have this intricate design of the arrows, because that's what the air nomads typically have tattooed on, in the air symbol as well. Now, interestingly, Mooncat decided to go with gold for this collection, so the caps are gold versus the silver, and same with the bottle logo. Like, the bottle logo has the elemental symbols, but also they are gold instead of silver. The gold is not like intense in your face, it's very soft, and at certain angles with the light reflecting on it, you kind of can't really tell them apart too much, but they are gold. First up, we have Spirit Water, and Spirit Water is a gray to light blue thermal with shifty iridescent flakes that give hues of green and blue or aqua. In the show, Spirit Water is the water where the moon and the ocean spirit resided from, and Katara got a hold of it from the Northern Water Tribe after they did their whole saving the Northern Water Tribe essentially thing. So there's that info. Application wise, on the first coat it did apply nicely, but I do run warm, and on the warm state I definitely could have seen the sheerness, so I went in with a second coat. Again, it applied nicely, but I could still see that it's sheer and patchy, and also the blue wasn't really like that aqua-y blue that I would like, so I went in with a third coat, and the third coat did allow the aqua blue to showcase better, and I feel like I got pretty good coverage. I really enjoy the multi-dimensional aspect of the flakes as you keep layering the polish on your nail. Formula wise, it is a little thick. However, I didn't struggle too much in applying it, but I can see that these flakies could be kind of cumbersome down the road. Despite it being flaky, I did notice that it dried down smooth, and I only needed one coat of top coat to finish it off smoothly. I do recommend a peel-off base coat because these flakes tend to be a hassle in terms of traditional removal methods, and I predominantly work in the peely base coat, so for me removal was very easy. Now moving on to bloodbender. This is a shifty blue magnetic with a dark berry red base. I do have a little bit of an issue with this specific naming of the polish. It is a pretty shade, however it does come from a event in the show where Katara is essentially forced to use bloodbending, and it's literally controlling someone by bending their blood. It's kind of like, why would you want to bring that traumatic experience into a polish? I guess it's just rubbing me the wrong way. In regards to the formulation, this applied very nice. First coat and second coat didn't really do it for me, so I did have to go in with a third coat, predominantly because the polish kept pulling itself in my indentations, causing a weird dark patchiness to occur. So a third coat for me was enough to completely cover myself up and give me that full even coverage. Overall formula is very easy to work with. It does dry down smooth. I only needed one coat of top coat to have a smooth even finish. I noticed when it is unmagnetized that I could see the lightest brush strokes, but it's not like super intense like you would see it in a pearlescent polish. Something I noticed about the blue particles is that they do transition into a nice purple shade, but only at extreme angles in lighting. And another thing is when I magnetized it, I noticed that it was kind of hard to see that rich berry red of sorts, especially on the cat eye, so it predominantly looks black in my eyes, which is unfortunate because I would have enjoyed seeing that red hue paired up with the blue magnetic pole. Next up we have Tales of Ba Sing Se, and this is a green to murky green slash chartreuse light green magnetic with a dark green base. Now in this show there is a episode called Tales of Ba Sing Se, and in it showcases Uncle Iroh's new life in the Earth Kingdom, and in the end it showcases him by a tree with a picture of his son who had passed away, celebrating his birthday. And there we get the iconic Leaves from a Vine song that will always bring me to tears. Now about the actual polish we just watched, it gave me really good coverage unmagnetized in 2 coats. The formula is very easy to work with, similar to bloodbender. It applied smoothly and it dried smoothly too. I only needed 1 coat of top coat for that smooth even finish. It does have slight brushstroke effects going on when you leave it unmagnetized. However, when you magnetize it, you don't really see those brushstrokes, but I do enjoy that I can get a glimpse of the dark green base color when I do magnetize this shade. And just like bloodbender, removal is going to be relatively easy. I again use a peel off base coat, but by traditional means you shouldn't have any issues removing the polish. Next up we have my cabbages, and this is a light green jelly base with shifty flakes of green, yellow, orange, and at certain angles a hint of blue. Now in the show there's this gag or comedy relief NPC that has a cart, and his whole purpose is selling cabbages. And what ends up happening is that the universe has a weird way of telling him his cart can't be present, and it always breaks. And his go-to line is, "My cabbages," in a big despairing tone. So in terms of this polish, it's a very sheer polish. On the first coat it was very evident how sheer it was. On the second coat I did get more coverage, but I am not a visible nail line liker, so I went in with a third coat in hopes of getting fuller coverage. But even in the areas that didn't have a flaky encoding it, I could see a part of my nail bed or nail line. So I think if you just predominantly want a flaky explosion of sorts, definitely sponge it on, but the flakes do a good job at giving you the illusion that you perhaps have full coverage. I think this shade could also be nice to wear as a topper since it's so sheer. I do enjoy the multi-dimensional look of the flakes during each coat though. Formula wise, it was surprisingly easy to apply. It is thick of course because of the amount of flakes that it has, and sometimes the flakes wants to be half off, half on near the tip of the nail. Just gently push it back. This does dry with a slight texture, however it wasn't a thirsty polish to where I needed 2 coats. I only needed 1 coat of top coat and it gave me that smooth even finish. Now removal of this is going to be quite an ordeal if you do it the traditional means. I definitely recommend the soak off method versus trying to scrub it off. Next up we have Jasmine Dragon, and this is a burnt orange magnetic polish with a dark red orangey base and yellow to orange flakes. Now this one also kind of rubs me the wrong way because Jasmine Dragon is Uncle Iroh's tea shop in Ba Sing Se, and Ba Sing Se is a city in one of the Earth Kingdoms. The fact that it is a very bright, fiery, and aggressive shade versus a tranquil green and ivory color, why? It looks more like it should be called Sozin's Comet versus Jasmine Dragon. Now, in terms of this polish, in one coat unmagnetized, it gave me really good coverage. It almost appeared to be full coverage, but I did go in with a second coat to ensure that the color payoff is better and that I do have full coverage. Unmagnetized, you predominantly see the orange and the occasional flakes peeking through. It's a very pretty shade of orange, and I'm very happy to see an orange shade. Formula wise, it is a little thick just like the others, but still manageable for me. It dries down rather smooth despite having some flakes in it. However, I only needed one coat of top coat for a smooth even finish. Removal wise, because it does contain flakes, I would recommend the soaking off or peel off base coat, but it's still going to be relatively easy to remove since it's not a huge amount of flakies on the polish. Next up is the Banished Prince, and this is a dark red to bright red thermal with shifty orange to yellow and green flakes. Now, Banished Prince is Zuko. Zuko is a prince in the Fire Nation. He is banished because his dad just doesn't like him, honestly. That's literally the gist of it. His objective to be unbanished was to bring the avatar to the Fire Lord. Now, on the polish, it gave me really good coverage on the first coat, but it was a little patchy, and I noticed that the flakes are much bigger than the flakes in my cabbages and spirit water. This polish is thick, and honestly I had trouble myself applying it like I normally do, so I had to readjust. I haven't added thinner yet, but I feel like this is one of them that I definitely want to add thinner to. Now, I did go in with a second coat to get full coverage and deepen the shade as well. Overall, the flakes of this polish do lay flat, but I did have one flake that didn't want to lay flat and kind of stuck up a little bit. Typically, you could just push them down as the polish is still fresh, but I discovered it after the fact. Otherwise, this polish does dry rather smooth, and I only needed one coat of top coat to even it out. Removal wise, I definitely recommend doing soak off or doing a peely base coat underneath. Next we have Breath of Wind, and this is a thermal that transitions from white to a slate blue gray, and it has a blue shimmer going throughout. Now, I was trying to remember if there was anything in regards to Breath of Wind specifically, but the name itself sounds pretty like Air Nation sounding, so I guess there's that. Now, on the polish, for the first coat, it did apply nicely. It is a little patchy, especially more so as it transitions to the warm state, which is that white shade, and it's predominantly because of my indentations. So I went in with a second coat to get better coverage, but I could still see some patchiness, specifically darker areas, again near my indentation. I went in with a third coat, and this one gave me more of a full coverage look. I do essentially show this polish in two coats on a smoother nail on myself later on in the video as I showcase these shades in different lighting. Something I noticed is that I felt like the blue shimmer was more prominent in the cold state versus in the warm state, but it could just be because of the tonality of the gray amplifying the blue, I guess. Overall, it's a really simple shade and color range. It does have really great self-leveling, and I think I failed to mention that amongst the other polishes, like, alright, I'm okay with you being on the thicker side, you know. This polish does dry smooth, so I only needed one coat of top coat to get that even smooth finish. In terms of removal, I don't foresee this being a problem child of sorts. It is predominantly a shimmer, and shimmers are relatively easy to remove. Lastly, we have the Avatar State, and this is a white shade with blue shimmer, and it glows aqua in the dark. The bottle did showcase a little bit more of a yellow glow, but that's due to the blue shimmers. So the Avatar State is the most powerful ability in the avatar world. When the person who is the avatar is in this state, like, their eyes will glow blue, and it signifies the connection to the cosmic energy of the universe and being able to channel in the skills and knowledge of the previous avatars. So this was a very even and smooth polish to apply. Like, on the first coat it wasn't even patchy, but I did need 3 coats to get that full coverage for me, because on the second coat I felt like I could still see like a pink of sorts sorts from my nail bed. Now this polish does have a texture to it. It's very evident when you are taking the brush out of the bottle and you scrape off the side. It's grainy of sorts. When I showcase the polish's glow in the dark capabilities, you do see a dark area near my indentations, and it's no fault of the polish, it's just the way my nails are. I did charge my polish with a UV light. You don't need a UV light. Your phone flash could charge it, any LED light could charge it. I just bought a UV light because Linry kept talking about hers and I wanted to feel something. Removal wise, you shouldn't have an issue removing this. It is technically a shimmer and those don't really struggle too much. So moving on to different lighting sources. Up first we have the outdoor sun, and from left to right I have my cabbages, tails of Ba Sing Se magnetized with a round end. So right now it predominantly only shows the flat color in the claw position. And then we have bloodbender, same magnetization style, and then pinky is spirit water. Now when I extend my hand, you can see the magnetization of tails of Ba Sing Se and bloodbender better. But here you can see the red better in bloodbender. I only did 2 coats on my ring finger and it showcases that red really nice. And same with the tails of Ba Sing Se, you can see the green base color better in 2 coats versus in 3 coats as I did in my swatch portions. And then the other 2 are also just 2 coats, and you can kind of see the sheerness that my cabbages has. It's not really full coverage in 2 coats unless that's your vibe and you don't mind visible nail line. And then on my right hand I have from left to right the Avatar State, Breath of Wind, Banished Prince, and Jasmine Dragon, and magnetized in the same style as I did Bloodbender and Tails of Ba Sing Se. Just like the other hand, these are only 2 coats and no top coat on any of them. Since we are outside, it is a bit chilly, so the thermals are staying in their cold state predominantly. Now looking at them in the outdoor shade, these really pop in my opinion in the shade, especially my cabbages. Those flakes really present themselves nicely and it gives the illusion of full coverage honestly. Like it's very hard for me to see the green jelly base aspect. And then you can see the magnetization of Tails of Ba Sing Se and Bloodbender a bit better here as well. And then spirit water, it looks the same honestly in the sun or in the shade. Like the flakes are more contrasty. I could definitely tell that there's a blue iridescent flake here. And then on the right hand we have the Banished Prince's flakes really showing themselves as well. And honestly even Jasmine Dragon, I feel like they're really popping. And then the Avatar State's giving us this really icy feel to it. And then here they are inside with yellow lighting. So I feel like the tonality of these always shift just slightly in yellow lighting. You can see here that the thermals are also shifting themselves. I am getting warmer, so they are shifting into the in-between shades, specifically spirit water. On my right hand, Breath of Wind has fully transitioned into the warm state, and Banished Prince is getting close to transitioning completely. The tip of my nails has the slightest dark red, and I feel like Jasmine Dragon just looks good in any lighting honestly. Moving on to comparisons, up first we have Spirit Water, and here I have ilnp Stormwatch and Mooncat Sagebush. These are the closest that I could find to Spirit Water. I don't really have many glittery grays. ilnp Stormwatch is much lighter in the gray tonality, but also the flakies are very different. They have an orange to yellow shift to them, and they are much smaller than Mooncat's. And then Mooncat Sagebush, I mainly wanted to compare the cold state of Sagebush to the cold state of Mooncat's Spirit Water, but Sagebush does have more of a grungy green gray look to it, whereas Spirit Water has more of a warmer gray. And then here is Sagebush and Spirit Water in their warm state, and right there like completely different. One's more of a muted green, the other one's very aqua blue of sorts. Moving on over to Bloodbender, I have here Mooncat's House of Hades and ilnp's Midnight Kiss. And I'm comparing Bloodbender unmagnetized to other blue shades just to get the range of blue going, but you can see here that both Hades and Midnight Kiss are more vibrant in the blue hue category, whereas Bloodbender is looking much darker. And then I started comparing it next to Mooncat's Root of All Evil and Mooncat's Dark Night of the Soul. So Root of All Evil has a red base as well, however the red base is more prominent, whereas you can't really see it when Bloodbender is unmagnetized. And then Dark Night of the Soul is there just to compare the range of blues again. Now moving on to more magnetic polishes to compare with Bloodbender, I have here Mooncat's A Galaxy Far Far Away and Mooncat's Epilogue to Utopia. Now Epilogue to Utopia unmagnetized looks the closest to Bloodbender unmagnetized. The main difference that I can see right now is that Epilogue to Utopia has more of a purple to blue shift, whereas Bloodbender is more of a blue to a different shade of blue shift as the light reflects on the polish itself. And then A Galaxy Far Far Away is a different type of blue and also has more sprinkles when unmagnetized, like you see the reds and the blues and whatnot. When magnetized in the cat eye effect, Epilogue to Utopia again looks very similar to Bloodbender. Main difference that I can see is that Bloodbender's background color is more on the red hue, whereas Epilogue has a black base. Not only that, but you can again see the purple in Epilogue and how different it is to the blue magnetic pole that Bloodbender has. And then A Galaxy Far Far Away has those additional flakes elements into it. And then lastly, I started comparing it next to Mooncat's Twilight Sonata and Mooncat's Forbidden Fruit. Twilight Sonata more so for the unmagnetized version of Bloodbender. I thought maybe the blues could be similar, but Twilight Sonata is a little bit deeper of a blue. I mainly wanted to compare Forbidden Fruit and the cat eye effect with Bloodbender so you can see how close the red base is. But I also feel like with Forbidden Fruit unmagnetized, you can see the red underneath better than how it's presented in Bloodbender unmagnetized. And then moving on over to Tales of Ba Sing Se, I have here the non-magnetic polishes that I want to compare to it. And up first I have here Mooncat's Serpents of Eden, Phobes Among the Foliage, and Holo Taco's Peridon't Bother Me. Now Phobes Among the Foliage is very like a true chartreuse and it has an orange shift to it as well. And then Peridon't and Serpents are too much of a vibrant green compared to Tales of Ba Sing Se unmagnetized. And then moving on to the magnetic polishes, I have here Mooncat's Mutiny, Mooncat's Forbidden Fruit, and Crack's Unripe. So unmagnetized, I feel like Cracks is the closest to Tales of Ba Sing Se, but there's just ever so slight difference of the shade of green. And then Mutiny and Forbidden Fruit are very different unmagnetized. However, when magnetized in the cat eye look, I feel like some of these are very darn close to Tales of Ba Sing Se. So Mutiny has a teal background and a brighter green magnetic pole. Forbidden Fruit has a red background with similar-esque magnetic pole colors as Tales of Ba Sing Se, and Cracks has a dark gray base and similar colors in terms of magnetic pole, but it has a more green variant to it. And then Tales of Ba Sing Se is a dark green base with more chartreusey magnetic poles, but like pretty darn close. Now moving on over to my cabbages, I have here Mooncat's Hardcore Buttercup and Mooncat's Tyrannosaurus Hex. Now Hardcore Buttercup is more pale in comparison to the other two, and then Tyrannosaurus Hex is more of a truer green and the flakes are much smaller and the coverage is just overall more full. And then I started comparing it next to Holo Taco's Foiled Again and Holo Taco's Emerald City. So these are like my next quote-unquote flaky polishes, but even here just on their own, like they're very different, not only in the shade of green but like in the types of flakies. Up next we have Jasmine Dragon, and for that I decided to compare it to Mooncat's Nocturne and Mooncat's Dawn of the Empire. Now both of these are kind of in the orangey red, mainly red category, and I'm showcasing them here unmagnetized so you can see how different they are. And when they are magnetized in the cat eye effect, they're still very different. This is where Jasmine Dragon really shines through, where the other two are of this black base with a red orangey magnetic pole. Jasmine Dragon is this beautiful deep dark red base with the flakies and the very vivid red orange magnetic pole. And then I started comparing it next to Holo Taco's Feeling Sparks and Holo Taco's Tax Haven. Feeling Sparks was one that I kept seeing bouncing around when Mooncat was teasing this collection, and I agree, like there are some similarities and whatnot. Unmagnetized, they're not really similar. Feeling Sparks is more on the orangey yellowish side, like a lighter orange of sorts, and Jasmine Dragon here almost looks like a red versus an orangey shade, because usually Jasmine Dragon is more of this vivid orange. And then Tax Haven's kind of like that in between, like the shimmers of it is both orange and red, so I thought it'd be a good comparison. But when magnetized, Feeling Sparks and Jasmine Dragon could be cousins. Feeling Sparks' base is kind of deeper and darker, and the magnetic pull again is that orangey yellow pull versus Jasmine Dragon's red orange pull. Lastly, I have Holo Taco's Disco Inferno and Holo Taco's Rover. Disco Inferno would be one of the hottest oranges that Holo Taco's ever released. Thought it'd be a good comparison to show it next to Jasmine Dragon unmagnetized. And then I have here Rover, which I thought they could be like sisters. And unmagnetized, they're looking more like twins, honestly. But that's if you want it unmagnetized. Jasmine Dragon's a magnetic, so you can play around with different styles and whatnot. Moving on over to Banished Prince, I have here Mooncat's Jasmine Dragon in the reverse magnetization and Holo Taco's Simply Deceased. Is it a stretch to try to compare Jasmine Dragon to Banished Prince? Maybe, but I felt like in the reverse magnetization, they're kind of similar. Banished Prince right now is showing in the cold state, so it's predominantly that dark shade. And then Simply Deceased is one that I felt were very, very similar. Like the main differences being the tonality. Banished Prince's base color is more of a dark maroon of sorts, whereas Simply Deceased is essentially black. And then in the warm state, the bright reds that they both display is just ever so slightly off. I feel like Mooncat's Banished Prince has bigger flakes, whereas Holo Taco's has more flakes, but they are in the small and medium range. It's giving, can I copy your homework? Sure, make sure you try to make it different. Proceeds to do the slightest adjustment. Then I started comparing it next to Mooncat's Stumped and Tyler Trinkets' Rhinestone Cowboy next to Banished Prince in the cold state, as I felt that those would be the most similar. Now, Stumped is the biggest outlier here. The flakes of them is very much fall. It's golds, it's oranges, it's light greens, and the base color of it is a little bit more on the brown side. Banished Prince is a very dark red and then red flakies. And then Tyler Trinkets is another black and red base with smaller flakes compared to Banished Prince. So if you prefer Banished Prince in the cold state only, highly recommend checking out Tyler Trinkets' Rhinestone Cowboy. And then I thought of doing an experiment, seeing how it compared next to Mooncat's Queen of the Dead. Queen of the Dead is just a plain creme thermal, but the color ranges in terms of memory seemed similar, but in actuality, Queen of the Dead is much, much darker. And then on the far right, I have a combination of Queen of the Dead topped with one half being Stumped and the other half being Forces of Evil, just to see if we can kind of recreate it of sorts. But the flakes are just completely different, and the tonality of shades of red is also different. However, if the things on the right are your preferred over what's shown for Banished Prince, there you go. Easy little experiment. And then I started comparing the warm state of Banished Prince next to Holo Taco's Big Reef Energy and Mooncat's Forces of Evil. I would say Banished Prince is more on the true red compared to those two that lean more on the pinky red. The types of flakes are also very different. They're both iridescent flakes, of course, but they range in different shifts. Moving on to Breath of Wind, I have here Holo Taco's Spyglass and Holo Taco's Overshadowed. I wanted to see how much in the gray-blue area the cold state is, and it's pretty in the middle, I would say. And then I have here Mooncat's Castle of Cobwebs and Mooncat's Le Petit Mort. I wanted to see how these two bluish grays would compare to the cold state of Breath of Wind. And Castle of Cobwebs is more full tone gray with lighter blue shimmers. And then Le Petit Mort is silvery, almost like a blue silvery of sorts. And then once Breath of Wind is in the warm state, it's completely different compared to the other two. And then I wanted to compare it next to Mooncat's Flying Nimbus and Mooncat's Sabertooth. Flying Nimbus is another blue to white thermal, and Breath of Wind is theoretically not really blue, but too white thermal with blue shimmers, so I thought it'd be a fun comparison. And then Sabertooth, just to see if maybe we can get the mid transition and take a look at how close Sabertooth could be to that. And then moving on over to the avatar state, I have here Mooncat's Ghost of Hecate and Mooncat's Green-Eyed Monster. Ghost of Hecate has this very icy blue sheen to it, so I thought maybe it could compare it to the blue shimmer that the avatar state has. And then Green-Eyed Monster, mainly to compare the white of another glow-in-the-dark and also the light of another glow-in-the-dark. But pretty obvious is that the avatar state is an aqua glow, Green-Eyed Monster is a green glow. Also, another interesting coinkydink that Holo Taco releases their first aqua, and so does Mooncat, and they come from the same facility. And then lastly, I have here Holo Taco Swan Song and Dimension Nails Snow Goose, which I'm so sad Dimension Nails is no more, but you have to do what you have to do, and that's gotta be what's best for you, right? Honestly, Snow Goose, I would say, would have been the closest. However, seeing as the store is no longer in place, it doesn't really make sense to reach out, but I did want to showcase it still how it compared to Snow Goose, as they're essentially the same properties. The only difference is that Snow Goose is not glow in the dark, and the type of shimmer going throughout is very different. Mooncat's is more concentrated and Snow Goose is more spread out. And then Swan Song has a similar vibe to the avatar state, but it's more of a, how do I say it, like linear shimmer of sorts, whereas the avatar state is, I guess, a little bit more spread out than that. So that concludes the swatch comparison portion of this video. Please let me know any and all your thoughts down below and we can talk about it. Are you gonna get any of the polishes? Did you already get the polishes? If so, which ones, or the entire collection? Let me know. Now, overall, I very much enjoyed that Mooncat collaborated with Atla. Like, that's so cool. Despite my love of this show, I feel like we could have expanded more with this collection versus sticking to having two colors for the nations. Like, we could have definitely expanded more in having a shade inspired by Appa and Momo, because they're essentially the same color palette, honestly. We could have gotten bar glitters to imitate like the fur or something. Azula is another very important character in the show and has so much depth to them. I feel like you can create 2 to 3 additional polishes just based on Azula. Like, what did we have to celebrate or represent Toph? Nothing. What should have been there to represent Toph is maybe a black to green thermal with a silver magnetic pole, because she is an earthbender and she freaking taught herself how to metal bend on her own. She was literally entrapped in a metal case and she bended her way out of it. How freaking cool. That should have had its own polish here. Overall, I felt more excited about who they were collaborating with than how I felt about the polishes when I actually sat down and swatched them. I also wish we had other types of formulas included in this collection. The glow in the dark and the flakies, fine. It's the fact that we have 3 thermals and 3 magnetics. I feel like that's excessive, especially with those being more on the higher price point of the Mooncat catalog. So yeah, those are my final word vomits of this collection. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below and we can talk about it. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Flamio Hotman out. If you get the reference, you get the reference. Without further ado, let's take a closer look at these cartons. Are you visible? You're by the light. What are you doing? You look so mad. Mimis.